Okay. Okay, so I'm skipping all the way to chapter 15 and 16 because there's too many actually. There's too many politics and other more nitty-gritty things that I can't really get into unless there's enough background information built up upon it. So I'm just going to do a separate video to kind of cover that and to give the um, historical background to the best of my abilities, as at least enough so that we can at least understand enough of the background. I will do it in a separate video, and it is important because between chapters 7 to 15, which is right now, it Duma kind of briefly brushes off a lot of the characters and what they are doing, how far, where they are, and all that stuff. So we do need to do that because without that, when we are done with at least the first part of the story, we won't know where the other characters are. So it's actually relatively important. But I'll get to that sometime next week. Now, for this week, we are interested in understanding Edmond's predicament being stuck in the prison and what we can actually learn from this. Now, personally, I think the book really, really shines at this point because this is where we see how Edmond struggles through his hardships and his despair of being wrongfully imprisoned, and how he climbs out of it, and how he demonstrates a lot of traits and teaches us a lot of lessons that you probably have heard before as well, either from a teacher, your parent, or relative, or even like your friend. When they say a line or when they say some words that can be vague if applied in the wrong context. So we'll have a look at some of them. Now, I'm going to start chapter 15 by actually talking about the grief cycle, actually, because Edmond's suffering when he's trapped in the prison for the first few years of his life very, very much mirrors this chart over here. And surprisingly, Dumas actually followed this quite accurately, partially maybe because grief and anger has always had the similar cycles throughout human history and human nature. So I will be covering this specific cycle first and walk through how Edmond goes from denial into anger and then to bargaining and then depression and then to acceptance, and how it can actually be applied to our own lives regardless of the context to a certain point, regardless of context to a certain point. Now, let's start with denial. So, Edmond's despair and hope. So, chapter 15 opens up with Edmond being in his prison cell and contemplating life and waiting for his deliverance. He's waiting for someone, the authorities in this situation, to actually review his case and actually free him from what he perceives to be a wrongful imprisonment. So he waits and he waits and he waits. His Initially he was very sure that he's going to be released. This is very common, especially when you are waiting for. Imagine you are waiting for like a verdict after like you finish an exam or you finish a presentation and you are so sure and you're so confident that you're supposed to do well because of how well you did, how much preparation you had, how immaculate the presentation was, or how you didn't have any problems with the exam. So that's when you're in that moment of power where I'm surely gonna do this well. That's kind of how he feels at the beginning. But as time goes on, and as he doesn't hear anything about him being rescued or him being freed from his predicament, his calm, calm in his understanding of that, I'm actually not wrong, slowly seeps into anger. So from him going, I am not guilty, therefore I'll be free soon, he began to pray. Where as time goes on, he begins to pray. He prays for deliverance from God, and after that, when nothing happened, he tries his best to kind of gain a certain level of control. He asks the jailer to give him something to read, something to write, something to do. The problem is he kind of ruined his image and his credibility among the jailers because of a lot of the things that he done between chapter 7 and chapter 14, which I will cover in the next video. So they don't really acquiesce to what he wants. And what this does is you see as Edmond begins to struggle to control the things around him. He's already trapped in the jail, in jail. He can't go anywhere, he can't do anything. His only method of escape is to appeal to the authorities and to the governor, which he has, but nothing has happened. Right? So he steps back and say, okay, fine, let's see if I can at least get something to pass the time, read, to walk, or anything. And when that is not allowed to him, he has enough. It's basically him being stuck in a jail cell. That's when he turned to God and he prayed fervently. He prayed for God to deliver him. And this is very interesting because at this moment, at arguably the lowest moment of his life, if on his relatively short life, he's only like what, 25, 26 in this situation. He begins to realize that the prayers and everything that he has been taught when he was younger and the simple things in life, he begins to see the value in it. And this is actually relatively similar and uh, quite relatable to many, many people now, especially during the situation with the virus and the lockdowns and everything, where a lot of things you take for granted suddenly feels very precious to you. The ability to just walk out and walk back in to your house without any hassle or fuss or worrying about you will bring something back home, that's a big deal. So that's what I meant over here when I say prayers and simple joys. Now, Edmond kind of has another problem as well, which is that he's not educated. Now, uh, there will be a slight tangent about education later on in the few slides down. We will get there in a bit. But what I meant and what Dumas meant when he describes Edmond as being trapped because he has no education is he can't go beyond what he can see. He's trapped in his cell. So physically he can't touch, see, or smell or do anything that's beyond the cell. Physically he's trapped. Can he do it with his imagination then? Can he just like fade into his dreamland? He can, but to a limited capacity. As a matter of fact, to a very, very, very limited capacity because he has no understanding of how the world is like outside world. He's only understood the sea, sailing, his father and Mercedes, that's it. So he's limited in that sense. So when I say free in the quotation mark here, is that he's unable to wander. He's unable to wander to the outer world and just go like, hang on, what if this thing is this? What if that thing is that? And just wonder. Now, it doesn't change the fact that he's in prison, but it does take a bit of the edge off. At the very least, he has a control of where his imagination can go. But he can't. Even then, he can't. So when he has lost all control about anything in his life, he grew angry. And the anger was so intense that the jailers were terrified of him. His anger spilled into physical form where he began to curse and swear and to, in a sense, the beginnings of his vengeance. He begins to vow that he's going to go up against all the people who have caused him to be in this situation. In a way, he kind of grew up. He learned that God didn't put me here. Man put me here. The only question is who. I believe he thought to himself, I believe in the promises of Monsieur Villefort. I still stuck here. Right? He knows that someone has in a way he finally sees. Not see physically, but see in terms of like a mature person's way of understanding the situation he is in. That he's not here because God put him here. He's here because someone up there put him here. The problem is he just does not know who it is yet. But this is the beginnings of his vow of vengeance, where he vows that he will make the lives of these people miserable. But even then, he couldn't really think of a way because to him, it was like, how do I make them visible? I will capture them, I'll torture them, I'll make their life as horrible as possible. But then, even then, it doesn't bring satisfaction to him because after that is death. And to him, death means like, that's it, at the end. So what's the point? So, and the anger is also a way of him to try to seize control. So at the very least, he can think, he can plan, and he can go, I will kill these people. I will take my vengeance and my revenge on these people. But as time goes on, he realizes that, you know what, there's no point of me doing that. I'm stuck in this jail cell anyway. And he begins to struggle to find the meaning to live. What's the point of me staying alive for? I can't escape. There's no point in me staying alive in this cell. I can't do anything that I want. I'm literally a bird trapped in a cage and I can't do anything at all. And this is where he begins to give up as he finds no purpose and he just wants to die. Because at the very least, at this point, he gets to choose if he dies or he lives. Now, the reason why I refer this so closely to the stages of grief is that in many, many ways, and I might be oversimplifying this, it mirrors the steps and the thought process of people who contemplate suicide. When they are in a position where they have no power to do anything. Now, not authority, not authority, not the authority of I want you to do this, that kind of authority. It's just the power of them having the control and the agency to do something. In many ways, it demonstrates to you what happens when you take away an individual's complete choice, where they have no ability to do anything about the situation they're in. You leave them with very, 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 very few choices. And this is why when people contemplate suicide, they are relatively firm about it. Now, interestingly enough, when speaking about being firm about it, because now they understand, you know what, I can't control anything, but I can control in my resolve. I am going to do this thing and this is what I'm going to do. Because that's the only thing they can control. They can't control anything else, right? And they know that if they are resolved on this, they can do it. And this is the first time for certain individuals, especially for people who have been abused or in abusive relationships or in this situation, more literally being trapped in a jail cell, the only control you have is whether you live or die. So in a way, he found a purpose, which is to kill himself. Now, he has two ways to kill himself. One, he can either hang himself through the bars of his prison, because his prison has a window, so the window is barred, right? He's gonna hang himself by tying a noose using his shirt and his clothes, and he just hangs himself there. But he doesn't want to die that way because he feels that dying that way makes him look like a criminal. Because criminals are actually executed that way. They are hung and they are put on display in the harbor. So when people, especially sailors, sail back into the port, they go like, oh yeah, these are the people who died, and they are criminals. He does not want to die a criminal's death, so that leaves him the second option, which is to starve to death. And he goes like, you know what, I'll go for that option. And you see, he joyfully throws the food out. So what happens when he has committed to the fact that I'm going to kill myself, I'm just going to die? He begins to throw food out. Now we know that he is being fed in the morning and the evening. So every single time when his jailer gives him his food, he just tosses it out from the window, so he doesn't eat or drink. Now, as time goes by, he begins to have a problem. He begins to have a conflict between his instinct to survive and his will to die. This is a conflict of your mind and your body, basically. Your survival instinct kicks in and says, you need to eat this, you need to drink this. It is quite a relatively torturous process because it's very different when you're starving and you're thirsting to death and there's no food and water in front of you. Edmond actually has food and water in front of him, and holding the food and water in his hands before he throws it, he always has to struggle against his instinct of telling him, eat and drink, you need to live, and his mind telling him, no, you want to die. Don't forget your resolve to die. So as time goes on, and as his survival instinct gets stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, the book actually describes this. Your survival instincts begin to work to try to keep you alive, right? The dungeon seems less dark, his situation less desperate. Your brain starts to find solutions that you never thought it was there. It starts seeing things that you're not meant to be there. Now, it doesn't mean that you're hallucinating. It just means that when your brain kicks into survival mode, it does a lot of things to try to keep you alive. One of the things is it starts flipping through a book, metaphorically a book, to kind of find a solution to try to get you out of the situation. So that's what it means when the darkness, the dungeon seems less dark. It's not a literal that his dungeon is not that dark anymore. It's just that he begins to see things much differently. Maybe I can do this, maybe I can do that. Options that were never open to him are finally now open to him. This is very common as well for when you're in a very dire or desperate situation. The moment you calm down slightly and your brain goes like, okay, we need to do something about this right now, you start realizing a lot of ideas and a lot of solution comes out from your head. Now, of course, whether or not those ideas and solutions are valid or can you even consider using it, that is slightly different topic entirely. As a matter of fact, he actually has this slight conflict with Abbe Faria later on, which is again further down the slide. We'll examine that later on. Now, what does this show us up to this point in the chapter? It shows us that if you resolve your resolution, your will is more powerful than you think. It just depends on how far you have to be pushed in order for your will to be that strong. Now, as powerful as it is, it can be misused. You can use it wrongly. And when you use it wrongly, you will damage yourself. Now, if we take it out of the context of Edmond's situation where he wants to kill himself, if you are trapped in a situation where you can't get out in real life, it can be anything, and you decide, you know what, instead of doing this, because you don't want to do A, right? But because you can't do B, C, D, E, or F, or anything you want to do, if I give you another option like option Z, and this option is not really like, it's really, really like not a great option, but you really don't want to do option A for whatever reason, and you choose option Z, at that moment you're basically choosing the lesser of two evils. Or debatably sometimes even the worst evil, because the consequence of your choice of picking Z can be far reaching. It can be something even worse. Here's an example. A bit hyperbolic, but a bit dramatic, but if it works. Let's say you're given a choice of doing this as a career. You are meant to be your parents or your family or your legacy or whatever external pressure or intern or usually it's an external pressure starts telling you you should do this, and you internally go like, no, I don't want to, I want to do this instead, which can be something else, which let's just call this B, right? And because you have no control of whether you can pick B or not, either because your parents take that away from you, or you're ashamed from doing it, or you just don't have the resources to do it because you don't have money to pursue it because your parents don't support you whatsoever, this is where you can go like, you know what, I don't do A, and since you are forcing me to do A and I'm adamant I don't want to do it, you will find a way out of spite and out of anger to just do something that's completely opposite of what people want from you, and you might choose a very bad option. And this can be an example, a bit dramatic, but again, taking drugs as a sign of rebellion. You can go like, you know what? Since I can't do that, what are you gonna do now when I do this? Now, on the surface, if you give this explanation for somebody who has no idea of the consequences of taking drugs, it seems relatively rebellious. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever, the kid or the person or whoever is just being rebellious. But we know scientifically, and in a way socially as well, because we've been taught this, it's not a good idea, because the long-term consequences, well, the list of long-term consequences are really, really, really long. For one, for starters, the drugs can damage you physically and psychologically, and also like your brain, your nervous system. Depending on how hard the drugs you're taking, it will mess you up. That's the first thing. The second thing, it will naturally bring you into contact with people who you do not really want to associate with on a long-term basis, because they are not really the best of people. Can be people like maybe they're drug dealers, or they are fellow drug abusers, or they can be criminals. You never know. And this is a puddle or pool you do not want to step in. The moment you step in, and okay, getting out of it is one thing. Even if you step out from this pool, you will always be tainted by this pool. So the application and the lesson that you can learn from Edmond over here is actually relatively far reaching. Now, his consequence is actually kind of obvious, which is that he's just too weak to do anything. He has not eaten and drank anything for God knows how long. So his brain basically begins to shut down. His entire body just begins to die because you have no energy, no water, and whatsoever, right? Now, so that is his immediate consequence. Now, again, on the surface, it seems like a relatively I know it's about him dying, but if you compare to you needing to live a long-term consequence, such as you messing your body up due to alcohol or whatever, compared to Edmond, technically speaking, if he just dies, right? But if we apply this into a larger context, situation makes it much more serious. Now, so this leads us to, how does an individual then regain control? Because you can go into a really, really bad place. Question is how do you get out of it? And everybody does this. You will encounter this all throughout your life. It just depends on how unfortunate in a way how lucky you are or unlucky you are. Some people go through this process more often than others. Some people barely go through this throughout their lives. Their situation, they're relatively blessed. Now, so for Edmond, the hope comes in the form of hearing a dull digging sound. So, oh, before we continue, actually, Edmond was in that suicidal mode situation where he was like, "Do I want to leave? Do I not want to live?" For 6 years. He basically was in that whole miserable existence for 6 years, and only then he committed to trying to kill himself. And the moment he committed and he wanted to kill himself, he started hearing sounds, and this sound sounds like someone is digging. Now, in a way, this sound is like a hope. It's like hope for him because he begins to immediately go like, "Hang on, is that digging? Is somebody trying to escape?" And he took it as a sign from God that, at his most dire moment, at the moment when he's about to die, a sign shows that maybe, just maybe, there's a way out of the situation. Now, he has a choice here. He can just go like, you know what, I'm just hallucinating, just let me die and just die there. Or he can choose to be inspired by the fact that actually maybe if someone he can hope to escape, I can maybe try that as well. So now what does he do? He chooses immediately, actually, he grasps on living. He does not want to die. He grabbed it and he went with it. Now, this is when he began to realize that, okay, crap, I need to do something. Now, what do I mean when I say I need to do something? Because if he can hear the digging, other people can. And at this moment, dramatically, the jailer comes in. And what immediately went like, okay, I need to do something because if this guy hears this, it's game over. So what does he do? He begins to make a lot of noise. He begins to start talking. He begins to say a lot of weird things. Like he starts complaining about the food. He starts complaining about everything. Now, fortunately, the jailer was relatively compassionate. Um, this is actually a side credit to a very very almost unimportant, like non-existent character, which is jailer. The jailer here was generous enough and kind enough to see that Edmond has been suffering. And by the way, him trying to kill himself does not go unnoticed because I mean, you haven't ate or drank anything for days. You will look like you are dying. And he has not been communicating with the jailer at all. So the jailer, out of kindness, actually bought slightly better food for him on that day itself. Which is honestly, if you think about it, is almost miraculous because he actually needs the food to regain his strength right now. If the jailer was just an ass and went like, you know what, you want to die, just die, and continues your normal food, the relatively like stale bread and horrible meat, he still can get better, but nothing beats better food. Better food makes a huge deal in this situation. So you see Edmond begin to cultivate this fire of hope that he has. He protects it from the jailer so the jailer doesn't find out. And then now he needs to do something to ensure this fire keeps going, this hope keeps going. Now, how? He's too weak to do anything. So the first and most important thing, he begins to eat. He tries to regain his strength. He drinks and eats, and his brain begins to work properly again. This is partly the reason why it is extremely important for everyone to always eat and rest appropriately. It is because that it is your bare minimum function. If you don't even fulfill that, you can't build anything upon it. Hence the reason why having adequate sleep, actually, as a matter of fact, I need to rephrase that. Adequate and quality sleep plus adequate nutrition. This ensures that biologically, at the very least, you're taken care of. That's very, very, very important. Now, when that's done, this allows him to do a few other things as well. Now um, Duma actually makes it very clear that he is now awake. He is now alert. He realizes that what he has to do. Once he has started putting fuel into his brain starts waking up. His brain starts ticking and going like, oh, okay, I have to do this, I have to do that, I need to do this, I need to do that. This is what I have to do in order to make sure this thing happens. So it is described like he suddenly is playing chessboard, right? So that's what in a way, the second step is when you seize back control of your life, which is that you need to make sure you can function properly. Because if you can't function properly, right, you can't capitalize or use any of the, in a way, advantages that you given, or even the hope or the what's the word I'm looking for? Opportunity, that's a better word, that you have been given at this moment. So he begins to do that. Now again, eating and drinking allows him to plan and to reason. Now then this leads to the next step, which is the importance of learning how to experiment and the importance of using your brain, to be really honest. So now that he has regained senses in terms of using his cognitive functions, his brain is no longer playing tricks with him because he's starving or whatsoever. He then begins to realize that, okay, I need a way to find out about the noise. I need to know if this noise is real, if it's fake, if it's just a bunch of nonsense I'm listening, or is it even actually a prisoner? I need to find out. I have no idea how. Now, this is where experimentation comes in. That's what I mean when I say experimentation. He begins to think. He needs to cook up an experiment to ensure that the people, or at least the information he's going to obtain from what he's going to do, is going to reflect accurately for him. So he then tells himself, okay, now I know that there's digging. Problem is, I don't know who is digging. So he begins to logically try to think about it, right? He begins to think, okay, it can either be a fellow prisoner or it can be a jailer. Or at least people who are maybe the prison employed some people to try to like um fix something or to renovate something. He has no idea, but he knows it's either A or B. Question is, how do I find out if it's either A or B? So he then did this. He went like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna knock on the wall. What's gonna happen if I knock on the wall is, if it's a fellow escapee who wants to run away, they will stop immediately because they don't know what the knock is. So they might be afraid that the knock is like trying to identify them, so they'll stop. However, if it's a jailer or somebody who is working for the prison, they will immediately start asking questions, who the heck knocked and stuff like that. So through this work of logic, he then proceeds with his experiment, which is just to knock the wall. Now, I know it's a bit too picture perfect because there's a few other variables, but this is an example of what you can do when you are in a position where you need a solution and you don't know what the solution is, or at the very least, you don't have a very, very clear and conclusive way to getting an answer. You need to try something. Hence, that's why it's called an experiment. That's the reason why you study science. You don't study science not just to understand the facts, you study science to understand what are the steps you have to take in order to identify information or variables that are previously unknown to you. So, what does his experiment yield? He knocks, and the noise stops, as if by magic, and he immediately jumps to the conclusion, oh, a prisoner is trying to escape. Now, there's a tension and there's like a hype at this point. It's very interesting because it is very similar to when you are undertaking a big project, or when you're doing something, or when you are in the middle of doing something very exciting, but you can't rush it because it takes time, right? Let's say you are like organizing a trip, or you're planning a solo trip to somewhere, something, anything that you're planning to do and you're super excited for, and you cannot do in one day, you realize that night is very difficult for you to sleep because your brain starts doing a lot of things. Your brain starts going like, oh, hang on, I think we can do this, or oh no, we have to do this as well. You just can't sleep because you're like so hyped up on like, energy, and that's exactly what Edmond's going through right now. He's so excited about the fact that, oh my god, there's somebody who's going to escape. There's somebody who wants to run away. And there's so many possibilities after that. He couldn't sleep. He was restless completely. And then here's the important part. When the jailer visited the next morning and gave him his breakfast and left and locked the door. Before this, that lock is a reminder that you're trapped here forever, and it brings him despair. But now that he has found purpose and he has a new sense of meaning to his life, and he has a different mindset, that sound no longer sounds like it's death. The sound sounds like, okay, get lost, I can finally work. And this kind of goes back to my previous slide, which is the real meaning of having and being in the right mindset. You hear many times people say that, oh, you must have the right mindset, you must have the right mindset. But what exactly does it mean to have the right mindset? It does not mean to always think positively. You overdo it, you will get into trouble. It doesn't mean you shouldn't think negatively because you need to be realistic to the fact. As a matter of fact, Edmond's inability to think negatively got him into trouble in the first place. Now, too much negativity is bad because to you everything is hopeless. You know, I'm going to do this, this is going to fail, and then that's it. So you need to be in a mode where you are very conscious of what's good and what's bad and track the needle in between. And that's where Edmond actually demonstrates right now. He understands that I can get caught. So what do I have to do not to get caught? It's difficult for me to escape, but doesn't mean that I shouldn't try. Communicating with this prisoner might have multiple other problems, but I don't know what it is, but I have to at least try because if not, what's the point of me still being alive? So this is what it actually means to be in the right mindset. You actually need to understand what it means to be in the right mindset in the first place, because the word right in right mindset does not actually mean what it means on the very surface level. It changes from context to context, it changes from situation to situation. But in a way, you can take it and you can interpret it as I have to do the best I can in the situation I'm given. And I have to be extremely aware of the pros and the cons, and I need to think about the process very relatively thoroughly before I do anything, right? And that's exactly what he's in the situation is right now. Now, he is now at least in again. He now finds purpose, finds a direction. So what's the next step? His experiment came back and failed. Now, what do you mean by fail? Because his second experiment was trying to dig his own hole because he realized that I can't just wait for this person forever, right? And he is inspired. He's inspired. Oh my god, there's this person who's digging a hole or trying to escape. Surely I can do it. And he makes his first mistake, which is he didn't think about what he should do before he actually start doing it. He just started attacking a wall. But the problem is he did not do it properly. Now, prison cells last time are built in a very traditional way. If you have ever seen how bricks are layered, right, it's literally brick, cement. So it's like a layers upon layers. Instead of attacking the cement that glues everything together, he attacked the brick, the brick, the stone. It's kind of stupid because the stone is hard, way harder than the cement. So he learns, oh, whoops, okay, I made a mistake. But this is important. He might not have made progress, but at least he learned that he can do something. And again, it's not even tangible. He can't even see the stone being moved. He can't even see the stone being chipped. You just kind of go like, oh crap, I made a mistake. But the fact that he actually realized that, you know what? Me doing something, making a mistake, and not making any progress and learning from the fact that I should not have done that is better than me sitting on my bum and not doing anything at all. And that's where you see his progress. And then he realizes that this kind of gave him a new realization. It like gave him a eureka moment. Not in the yay eureka. It's like a regretful kind of eureka, which is that if I hacked the whole night at a wall, a stone wall, and I didn't get anything done, but I still feel inspired. Imagine what I would have felt right like if I actually spent the years I was living in my miserable existence, just whining and just going like I want to die, and doing something about it. He regretted wasting 6 years just moaning and groaning about him being stuck here, not doing anything, when he could have just done something to fix the problem. And that inspired him. And this is what it means to have a different perspective of what has happened in your life or what you have experienced. Because as you grow older, you see things and things change. The way you see things change, your perspective changes. And when that changes, you begin to realize that a lot of things that happened in the past last time was either really, really stupid, or you could have done things differently. Now, that's why regret is a killer, because you can never go back to fix it. But what it does is it allows you to make sure you never make the mistake again, which is exactly what Edmond does right now. And as a matter of fact, you see him do this throughout for the rest of his time in the prison, especially even after he meets Father Faria. Now, he then improvises, and this is where what I mean by the moment he starts taking control slowly, bit by bit, things kind of snowball and escalate and gets better and better and better and better. And in this situation, what is it for him? He starts realizing that okay, I need tools. He breaks the pitcher, basically the thing that holds his water, to use the shards like just to scrape the cement. After a while, he realized that's not good enough. He just can't move the stone. The stone is too heavy. If he uses the pitcher as a lever, the pitcher will break. So then he then thinks to himself, okay, I need something harder than that. And then he immediately goes, hang on, the jailer holds an iron pot. And he's just thinking about how to get the iron pot because he can use the iron pot for so many things. Because it's iron, right? It's far more sturdy than a clay pitcher, which can just break by dropping it on the ground. Now, what's the importance over here is that it shows you the importance of attention. Edmond has been paying attention the moment he started eating food and having water. His brain turns on. He starts noticing and observing things around him. Can you imagine if he doesn't even know the jailer has an iron pot? He will be like, okay, crap, what do I do now? But because he noticed, he goes, hang on, there is a tool I can use. It's just not in my hand. How do I get that into my hand? Now, notice he didn't give up. He didn't go like, oh, there's no way I can get it. He actually thinks on how to get it. Again, showing you how much he has changed. His mindset has changed completely to the point of giving wanting to die, starving himself, dying. To you know what? I'm just going to do something, but I don't care. I will do what I can to live and escape. Because again, he's inspired by the fact that there's another person who's willing to do it. Why can't he do it? Him taking control back in a way, and then he slowly begins to try to get better and better. So the importance in the what we learn here is to be aware. You must be aware of what's going on around you. Only then you can actually do what you have to, because you never know when the information around you comes in handy. Now, of course, you can't be like full on 100% attention all of the time, but if you're going to be in a place for a very long time in this situation, like in prison, or if you go to college, you're going to be in the same classroom, same campus, same hall the whole time, or if you're at work, it pays to know where things are, who is in charge or what is the time certain things happen, the schedule and everything. This is the reason why it is extremely important for you to know things, because it's not for anyone else's benefit, it's for your benefit. You will never know when this information comes in handy, and when the information comes in handy and you don't know, you look like a fool at best. At worst, you look like a moron and idiot, because you can be working or studying at a place for almost 5 years and you still don't know anything about that place. Actually, as a matter of fact, that reflects very badly on you. It means that you just don't care. Hence the advantage and the importance of attention. Now, then what does this do? He gets his tool. Now, how he got his tool is actually quite clever. Edmond only has a plate and a pitcher, which he drinks water with. Now, we know he no longer has the pitcher because he broke it in order to use it to scrape cement. Then he goes like, okay, you know what? Let me try doing this. What he does is that he puts the plate directly in front of the door when the jailer opens the door. So when the jailer opens the door, he immediately steps on the plate and the plate breaks because it's just a clay plate, right? And the jailer gets extremely annoyed and he goes like, great, now how are you going to eat, right? And Edmond then proposes to him, why don't you leave your iron pot here? And I'll just eat from that until you can give me a replacement tomorrow. And the jailer just goes like, okay, you know what? Yeah, take it. You know what? Good luck breaking this at least. Because don't forget, the jailer's kind of pissed off at this point. He first broke his pitcher, now he breaks his plate. What next, right? So, like in a way that like a sarcastic way, the jailer gave him the iron pot and just kind of in a way just kind of tell him off and say, here, go ahead, break this. But what's important is Edmond finally has what he wants, right? He's overjoyed. He prayed to God and thanked God for that. And again, this shows you how much he finally learns gratitude. He finally learns gratitude. He sees the importance of the small things. Of even, come on, it's an iron pot. It's gold. It's not even his freedom, but it's an iron pot. The fact that it is a tiny, tiny step in the bigger part of his plan, it was enough for him to feel gratitude for it. Right? Now, what does he need to do then? He can dig, right? He can open the wall now. But there's a problem. You can't just randomly open the wall because there's a lot of things you have to prepare for. How are you going to hide the hole? First one. When you dig, there's dirt. What do you do? So he actually covers up and hides as many things as possible so that the jailer doesn't find out. This is very similar to what you do in real life, where if going back to the example I gave, which is that if you embark into any project or if you are doing anything, there's always going to be loose ends. It's always going to be something that you're supposed to do and you missed it. And the problem is that if you miss that thing and you leave it be, it's going to roll and roll and roll and becomes a bigger and bigger problem until it actually eventually booms. In Edmond's context, in his situation, is if the jailer ever finds the dirt and finds the hole, it's game over for him. So he has all the motivation to make sure that is not happening. He needs to make sure that nobody finds the hole. Right? Now, the next problem he has, and yes, problems never end, is that he realized that his fellow escapee is not doing anything. The prisoner who first inspired him by digging stopped digging because he freaked out. Now, again, here is where we see Edmond's courage and character comes in. He goes, you know what, fine, I won't wait for you to get to me, I'll get to you. And he starts digging. Now here's the problem. He starts digging without again thinking about it, and he arrives at the foundational pillar. Now imagine if you can only dig a hole that's about a meter wide and a meter tall. So you're looking at from the tip of your finger to your shoulder. Okay, if you want to, I mean a rough measurement. Now imagine a pillar, like a wooden pillar, almost the same size right in front of your face as you dig the hole. There's no way for him to go around it. It's an actual foundational pillar. It means that it goes from the top of the building all the way down to the building. You cannot go past this. It's not possible. No way. And this is where Edmond kind of starts to begin to feel frustrated, and he goes like, "Oh my lord, please, what the heck is this?" Now, this is the time. Here's the funny part. Here is where he actually prays out loud. He says, "Oh God, please do not forsake me. Right? I cannot die. I cannot live. I have now found a new purpose. Please do not abandon me and make me, being miserable." Everything he's tried to do so far has been like kind of blocked off. Right? Don't let me be dwell in this misery. And at this moment, the fellow prisoner asks him, "Who speaks of despair and God in the same sentence?" Now, this in a way, this is the end of chapter 15, but it is so powerful because it is through Edmond's action that he actually got himself slowly away from his problem. Now, sure, we can praise Father Faria for actually being the inspiration in the first place, right? But at the end of the day, Edmond has to be the one that does it. The Father Faria, the Abbe can't just dig up into his cell and pull him to do the thing. That's not possible. Edmond has to be the one that does something. And by the way, there's no guarantee that the Abbe will even dig into his cell, right? Because we know he's trying to. Sorry, not we know. I know he's trying to escape, right? So there's no guarantees, but it's because Edmond was willing to do something. He was willing to take control of the situation and do something about it. He now finally, after 6 years, 6+ years in the Chateau d'If, finds someone that he can talk to, a companion. The final lesson that we can learn from chapter 15 is that sometimes we lead, sometimes we follow. The Abbe Faria led the situation. The whole thing started because he started digging first, and Edmond followed. But when the Abbe stopped digging, did Edmond stop doing it? I think he didn't. He went like, you know what? Now it's my turn. I'm just going to go. So whatever the situation is, we must always look at how do we move forward. Sometimes you don't have to be the one that leads, but sometimes you have to be the one that leads. Whatever the situation is, we must always find a way to move forward. We must find a way to keep going towards the direction we want to go, as long as you're clear on the goal. And that's what Edmond has demonstrated so far. He has demonstrated his resolve, actually, for better or for worse. And he has demonstrated that he's willing to do what it takes to live. Now, chapter 16 is when he meets Abbe Faria, Father Faria. And I titled the beginning of the book Gaining Trust. Now, bear in mind, this is the first time that Abbe Faria has met anyone since 1812, which is about almost 10+ years. Because he has been in the prison for way longer than Edmond, right? This is the first time these two men have met. And they're prisoners in a jail cell. So they're a little bit. The Abbe was a bit hesitant on telling him everything. As you can see, Edmond asked, "Who are you? At least tell me who you are." He's so desperate for that human connection. As a matter of fact, right, he was so not used to hearing anybody's voice other than the jailers. When the Abbe Faria asked him the question, he freaked out. He has been trapped in the jail for so long, he does not like hearing another human being's voice is like alien to him. That's what isolation has done to him, and as a matter of fact, that's what isolation will do to you. In a way, the moment you isolate yourself long enough, you kind of forgot how to socialize. You kind of forgot how to talk to people. You kind of go like, you basically become a potato, and you go like, because you have not done anything. You're not practiced like talking to people. Well, it's quotation mark practice, or you're not done anything to like talk to people. So what happens is that you really just become like a hi. It's very awkward, right? Now, for him in this situation, the funny thing is he's so desperate for connection, he's begging the Abbe, right? And at this point he doesn't know who he is, right? He's begging, please at least tell me who you are. Because the Abbe Faria wants to like go away. He's like saying that, I will come back later, right? Because he's so worried that the initial conversation where he was telling him that, oh, who speaks of despair and God in the same sentence is overheard by the guard. And when he says he'll come back later, Edmond immediately kind of forces him to promise he will come back because everyone was terrified that he's just going to say that and he's just going to disappear and never comes back. And Abbe Faria went like, I am number 27. It's a clear sign that he does not trust Edmond. Now, what Edmond does is that instead of accusing the Abbe of how can you not trust me, he just went like, I know you don't trust me, so I will promise you as a Christian, I swear, hence the bullet point. I swear on Christ's name that I will allow myself to be killed rather than give away the truth to our jailers and mine. In a way, he's trying to reassure the prisoner, or in this case, Abbe Faria, that he will not betray him. He will not tell the jailers that, oh, by the way, there's this guy who's trying to dig out his way out of jail. He will not. And he even furthermore does this again by saying, I would rather die than to betray you. Understand this. He's saying this to someone he has never ever met in his life, and he has barely spoken 10 sentences to him. This is how much that he's willing to go, how far he's willing to go. Now, of course, again, some of you might go like, oh, man, he might just be saying it true. True. But the fact that he's willing to vow, to swear that he will not do this, right? And we can kind of believe that Edmond will do this because we know that he's a man of his word. He might be a bit more cynical now because he's been in jail for so long and he knows people are responsible for putting him in. He has enemies. But we see again his character, his ability to be sincere. Now, even after saying that, right, you still felt that the prison 27, which is Abbe Faria, was a bit apprehensive. So then he tells him, right, to fully show his sincerity. Now, this sounds a bit weird or straight up porny. Now, I explain why. Then you shall love me, because he asked him, even if we cannot escape, I will at least have a companion and we can talk about things and we can talk about the people we love. Do you not have people you love? Edmond asked the priest, and Abbe Faria was like, no, I am alone, right? And Edmond tells him, then you shall love me. If you are young, I shall be your friend. If you are old, I your son. I have a father who must be 70 years old if he's still alive. I loved only him and a young woman called Mercedes. My father has not forgotten about me, I am sure. But as for her, God knows if she still thinks of me. I shall love you as I loved my father. Now, again, you need to take in context. He's barely known this guy for 10, 15 minutes, but he's willing to go, even to say something as cringy or as corny as this, just to really, really demonstrate his sincerity. So what do we know and learn from this? You can't build trust unless you're willing to extend yourself. And yeah, sometimes that means to extend yourself in a very weird way where you go like, oh my god, do I have to say that? Do I have to do that? But sometimes it pays to be the silly one or the vulnerable one or to be the first one. If what you want is to establish a meaningful connection with the person, you must show the person that you're willing to show your somewhat sillier side, or the somewhat less perfect side, or yeah, I'm a bit silly this way, oh yeah, I really really want this friendship or this connection that way. Because without doing that, you don't put anything on the table. You don't show the person your hand to say that I'm here because I want to do this, and if you're willing to, I'm willing to do the same for you. So the lesson we learn here is that we must be willing to extend ourselves and to put our best selves forward. You can't go up to the person and go like, I want to cheat you of your money and be expecting him to trust you, right? And as a matter of fact, that's partly the reason people don't trust other people, because they don't know what you're up to. Even if you feel like you're telling the truth. Are you telling the truth? That's the thing. I can go on a whole tangent about why this is the reason why we have to be honest and to have a very good image, blah blah blah. But I will probably save it for some other time. So this is a very interesting scene from Edmond, and again, his character really shows through. Even though he has been in jail for so long, when he has to be like sincere, when he has to be real, he's to be true, he's willing to be. Now, chapter 16, Abbe Faria, the teacher. His introduction to the story is extremely important, and it is arguably the turning point for Edmond. And his character is very, very interesting because he is like the wizard in the story. He's the wise and smart one. He shows his knowledge and resourcefulness, right? The Abbe was like digging the hole, right? He did everything on his own, and Edmond even asked him, "How did you dig the hole?" And he's like, "Oh, I have my own tools." And he's like, "You have tools?" And he's like, "Oh, I made my own." We actually learn later on, he spent how long was it? 4 years. He spent 4 years making the tools. 4 years. Just making tools to escape. 4 years just to make a chisel and a hammer and all that stuff to escape. That's a lot of time to invest just to make sure you escape. He knows a lot of technicalities about digging the hole through the tunnel because I think Edmond shows us you can't just hack a hole and just dig. It's not gonna happen, okay? You're not gonna get anywhere. The Abbe actually explains to him, right? The Abbe explains to him, no, 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 you don't understand. You can't just break a wall, like a hole in the wall and dig. There's a lot of things you have to consider. Which direction it's going, which wall do you have to hack? Where this wall leads to? Can you escape if you go that way? There's a lot of things you have to consider. The Abbe really, really breaks down the whole thing from beginning to end to him, right? And he even demonstrates that he's very clever in a sense, which is that he asks Edmund, shh, don't talk so loud. Don't say things so loud. You never know. And he's also as careful as Edmond, he hides the dirt, right? So it demonstrates that this is a man who knows what he's doing. This is a man who understands that, oh, in order for us to do this, there are things that we have to do. Now, here's the interesting part, okay? Here's the part of the story where it gets interesting. And this is only when they have barely met each other for 2 hours, 3 hours. And the Abbe Faria, after he enters Edmond's cell and talks to him and kind of gets his direction of where the cell is facing, where he's digging through it, he declares that, oh, there's no way we can dig out because there's just no direction that they can dig that leads to a possible escape, which is the sea, basically. There's no way. Now, this is when Edmond kind of goes like, no, hang on, there's a chance. Now, he does two things here, which you can see over in this slide, but I'm going to come back to this in a bit. So he does two things. First things first, he kind of tries to encourage the Abbe Faria. And the second thing he tries to do is that he tries to assure him that, you're not just here to help me go free, I actually value you as a companion. You see, you can console me and support me because you seem to be a person of exceptional strength. This is after the Abbe tells him, by the way, that there's no way we're escaping, we are stuck here forever. If it was any other person or a lesser man, right, who is just preoccupied with escaping, they would just like, okay, sure, bye. Since you can't help me escape, just that's it. But you see how sincere Edmond was. He was like, it's fine. If we can't escape, it's alright. Right? At least I have you here now, right? You can console me, you can support me, you seem to be somebody who is so you know the meme? Oh, wise men tell me. He seems like the kind of person, right? So Edmond was just enamored. He was just like wowed by Abbe Faria. And Abbe Faria shows that he's very knowledgeable in terms. I probably should have said that he knowledgeable is not really the right word. I repeat the word knowledgeable many times, but he's very well learned. He understands the histories. Because Edmond and him were having a conversation about where they ended up, how they ended up in jail. And and Abbe Faria was like, wait, if Napoleon is not on the throne, who is on the throne? And Edmond told him, oh, it's King Louis the 17th, 17, 18. Oops, either one of those. And he's like, ha ha ha, so history is so funny, it's the same thing in England as well, and it's the same thing in Italy as well. And that Edmond just looked at him and go like, what the heck are you talking about? Because again, it demonstrates that Edmond's not educated. He doesn't know anything at all. You see, Edmond knows Napoleon because he's his emperor, but who is Clement the 17th? Who's Alexander the 6th? No idea. By the way, they are popes. They are popes in Italy. The Abbe Faria is Italian, by the way. So that's the reason why he's using Italian examples. But he didn't just only use Italy as an example. He used England as an example as well. So it shows you that his knowledge is very deep. He understands the world in a way where that is just completely out of Edmond's field. Edmond just goes like, I have no idea what the heck you're talking about, but oh my god. He's completely enamored by the Abbe Faria. Now, besides showing his sincerity, you see now it's Edmond's turn to give hope to the Abbe. Abbe gave up. He's like, they're not escaping, whatever, And Edmond asked Abbe, so you have abandoned the idea of escape, right? Why are you discouraged? Surely expecting to escape the first time you try it is a little bit too much, isn't it? And here's where the epic kind of slaps him down and say, okay, boy, listen, it's not as simple as you think. And he explains the whole process of digging through the tunnel. You have to consider how far you have to go. You have to consider where you're digging to. If you accidentally dig up to somewhere in the middle of where the guards sleep, that's it. It's game over. If you dig under somewhere that's too soft and the whole thing collapses, you die and you are exposed. There's a lot of things that you have to consider. But the funny thing is, right, the more the Abbe speaks to Edmond, the more Edmond does not feel demoralized. He begins to actually go like, oh my god, this guy. And by the way, this is when Edmond really truly realizes and is truly inspired by the Abbe Faria. By the way, in the story, we are actually told the age of Abbe Faria is about 60. Here is a 60-year-old man who spent almost 6 to 7 years crafting his own tools, digging and hoping to get his way out. And Edmond is like at least a third of his age, and he did nothing. Going back to what I mentioned in chapter 15, he lamented that he didn't do anything for the 6 years. That instead of doing something to fix his problem, he was whining about the fact that he's trapped in the jail cell. Now, again, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with you complaining about the fact that you're in a very crappy situation. There's nothing wrong. It's human to do so. But after that, what do you do? That's the most important thing. Now, Edmond's inspired now. He's like, oh my god, this guy can do this. I'm a third of his age. If it takes him 4 years to dig how many feet, I can't remember, the book actually says how many feet. I can double that in less time than that because I'm younger than him. I'm stronger than him and I can do more than him. I'm a sailor. I'm a natural swimmer. If he knows that escaping is by jumping into the sea and hoping to swim to an island, it's child's play for me. I've done that before just for fun. So he begins to go like, in his head, he begins to tally his strengths. He begins to realize that, hang on, I'm actually very well equipped to do this. Why am I not doing anything about it? I can do this, I can do this. He begins to realize that he's not completely useless. He begins to see that he has skills and talents that even the Abbe Faria, as wise, as intelligent as he is, does not have. Right? So in a way, Edmond is like the more physical and stronger character. But then again, he is young, right? And the Abbe Faria is the more older, wiser, of the older and the wiser of both of them. Sorry, yeah, that's the thing. So then he kind of goes like, no, there's a way, right? And he proposes a plan to Edmond. And here's where we really, really, truly see the first conflict between Abbe Faria and Edmond, in terms of the way they show up. Edmond is willing to kill a guard in order to escape. So he gave him an idea. Okay, I tell you what, let's do it this way. We dig this direction, go this way, there's a guard there. We come out, we kill the guard, and then we run away. And the Abbe Faria looked at him in horror. And he goes like, no, I will not. And Edmond was surprised. He's like, but come on, it's just one guy, right? We can just kill him and run. Are you really going to not? It's your freedom. It's escape. Surely you're willing to kill someone to escape. And Abbe Faria says no. And he actually debates with him. He says that, let me ask you this question. He says this. Let me ask you this question. What stopped you from bonking your guards, the jailer's head when they bring food for you, take the uniform and walk out from here? And he just says that, I never thought about it before. And the Abbe Faria continues. Do you know why? And the Abbe explains to him, the reason it never occurred to you is because you detest the idea of bloodshed. It has never occurred in your mind because killing is something that is so abhorrent for you that you will never ever use it as an option. It is nature's way to kill, not us, not man. Now, of course, there's a whole logic that it was written by Dumas in it, which is kind of controversial, to be honest, if we look at it from a modern perspective. But what Abbe Faria did was logically and in a way compassionately explain to Edmond why we cannot kill someone. And you see Edmond is just go, oh my god, this guy actually makes sense. Edmond actually describes it as saying the words that he has always known in his mind and his soul, but he couldn't say it out loud. He couldn't understand what it means. That's what he's trying to say. Now, after all that, what did we learn from the interaction between the Abbe Faria and Edmond? Um, oh, hang on. Before that, oh no. We'll get to the next slide. Sorry. So what did we learn from here? Your goal will always seem very far fetched. And by the way, just to be clear, right, I'm going to explain to you why the goal is very far fetched. They have to dig a tunnel from their jail cell all the way to the outer wall, which is at least 100 meters, at least 100 meters. That will take them years, 5, 6 years, at least, or more, actually, come to think of it. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. Now, if nothing goes wrong and they reach the sea, they have to swim in the, they have to jump from the island. By the way, the island is like at least 40, 30 meters tall. It depends on where you dig up from, right? So, but just let's just say like it's about 20, 30 meters. That's about a 3-story building. You're then jumping into the sea, swim God knows how far, a kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers to an island, survive the swim, survive the island, find a way to get back to civilization and live. The steps and the amount of things that can go wrong is tremendous, right? I mean, just think of digging the hole. Like, maybe one day you dig a hole and the hole claps on you and you die, game over. Maybe one day you dig and you make too much noise, the guard finds you, game over. Maybe one day the Abbe Faria or Edmond dies, game over, the plan doesn't work. So there's so many things that can go wrong. So this tells us is that your goals will always seem too big and too impossible. Because there's too many variables. There's no way you can account for all of it. But what's the best you can do? The best you can do is go all the way back to step one and ensure you get from step one to step two to properly, and then step two to three, three to four, four to five, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat until you get there. And adapt and change according to the situation. There is another thing that was very important as well, which is that you will notice Edmond actually asks, well, he didn't purposely ask the question. He didn't go like, oh, why don't we do this? He kind of just throws an idea out there to propose an idea to offer an option, right? And the Abbe actually always counters and retorts by saying, oh, this will not work because of this and this and that and that and that. Now, it's not a failure. Many times people will think that, oh, see what kind of stupid question is that? Of course it doesn't work. You know it's a stupid question unless you actually ask it. And if in your head you think it's a stupid question, there's only two possibilities. One, you know the answer. In that case, you shouldn't need to ask the question at all. Or two, if you know it's a stupid question, it's because you know that it's something so basic that you don't even understand and you don't embarrass yourself. There's only two reasons why you never ask a stupid question. Edmond has no such scruples. He doesn't care. He just, why can't we just do this? And because he asked the question and the Abbe explained it to him, he manages to find a solution that does not conflict with any of the possibilities of things that can go wrong that the Abbe provides. So asking questions is important because by asking questions, you get a clearer idea of what the problem is, and you can tackle the problem in a much more precise manner. Now, the last slide for today, we are talking specifically about how, in a sense, OP Abbe Faria is. So, as I mentioned at least 3, 4 times in the slide before, he's a very knowledgeable man. I mean, besides the fact he's 60 years old, right? He has read over 500 books. So you can see in the quotation I gave, I have nearly 5,000 volumes in my library. That's 5,000 books, by the way. And we are talking about books about this that can be as thick as your palm. By reading and rereading them, I discovered that 150 books carefully chosen give you, if not a complete summary of human knowledge, at least everything that is useful for a man to know. This line is very important because it shows you something very interesting. He doesn't just memorize the book. He actually reads the book and thinks about it and go like, hang on, why is this? And he synthesizes the information, and from there he kind of summarizes a lot of the information. So from 5,000 books, he goes down to 150 books. And he has all the information in his head. He has read very widely, right? Again, 5,000 books and 150 books as well. Speaks 5 languages. And he self-taught Greek to himself in according to the book. And of course, most importantly, because he knows so much, before he does anything, he can consult the information in his head. Okay, I'm trying to escape from prison. Is there any situation of an escape that I know? Right? So you see, he says here, in the course of nearly 12 years that I spent in prison, I have mentally gone over all famous escapes. So he pulls up all the experience that he knows about people escaping from prison and thinks about it and see if he can apply those things into his situation. The Abbe Faria is a perfect example of what happens when you actually use knowledge properly. He doesn't memorize, he actually knows how to use the damn thing. Now, he's not just smart, he's extremely resourceful as well. He tells Edmond that he wrote a thesis. By the way, a thesis is like a PhD level kind of writing, and he did it in jail, okay, in prison. Now, he has no pen, ink, or paper. Edmond was so surprised. You wrote a thesis with what? Do you have pen? Do you have paper? He's like, oh, not really. I made my own pen and paper. Oh, not short. Sorry, the paper is not short. It's shirt. It's supposed to be shirt typo. He turned one of his linen shirts and he processed it in a way that it can be written like paper. So he literally wrote the whole thesis on paper on the shirt. For pen, the pen they're using right now is the traditional one where you see on movies that they have to dip the feather into the pot and they have to write that way. So that's the pen. And the way he does that is through fish bones. So I mean, if you guys have eaten fish before, you know the very tiny, thin bone. Yeah, he collected those bones from his meals to use it as a pen. And for ink, okay, in his it's mentioned in his cell there used to be a fireplace where people burn fire to keep themselves warm during the winter, and there's like black soot collecting on it. What he does is he collects the soot and he mixes it with a bit of the wine that he gets every Sunday, and that becomes ink. Now, and he even mentions, in case I have notes to make any sudden ideas and I cannot get my ink, I will just use my own blood. So in a way, I guess he gets points for being extremely resolute. But it is amazing. So the Abbe Faria has made a very huge impression just by just being in the book for 2 chapters. He has presented himself as a man of extreme knowledge and talent and resourcefulness. He has shown that he is more than willing, right, to in a way help Edmond, and Edmond's more than willing to be his friend and companion. And what this does is it sets up for what they will do and they will be for the next 3 to 4 chapters, which is exactly what we'll be doing next week for the next video, which is chapter 17, 18, 19, up to Edmond escapes from the prison. Spoiler alert, but oh well, it's kind of obvious. It's the Count of Monte Cristo. He has to escape to gain his vengeance. So it's likely the next section, which is the chapters up to Edmond's escape, has to be divided into 2 parts because there might be quite a bit of information there, so I have to divide it into 2 bits. But we will see. I will think about it. But that's basically it for this week. We learned what it means to claw your way out from a very dark place, and we know what it means. How do you make friends? How do you make connection? How do you make the best of the worst situation you have? And most importantly, and I'll probably make a separate video about the knowledge thing when we're done with the book, because I need the whole book for that as an example. What it actually means to be educated, what it actually means to have knowledge on hand. It does not mean that you know a lot of stuff. It means you actually know how to apply. Now, again, that's probably a separate video that I have to do when I'm done with the whole book. But when that happens, that's when that happens. So that's pretty much it